Good morning. And a very good morning to everybody who is watching online. I've wanted to do that for the whole of my life. Look, it is such a pleasure to be with you today and to spend some time. Lots of you know me already. My name is John May. I have two jobs. I'm the Secretary General of something called the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award, of which a little more later in this presentation. But I'm also Vice Chairman of the World Scout Committee. And a number of you have been asking me why I'm not wearing a scarf this morning. The truth of the matter is that I felt that as I was an external speaker, I should wear a suit and a tie instead. And also because if my mother sees me on the internet, I want to be enjoyed. So, it's a real pleasure to be with you. I'm really, really delighted to be with you this morning. I'm a little bit scared of talking to you all because most of the speakers who are speaking to us at this absolutely amazing congress are academics and intellectuals. I am not an academic, and I am certainly not intellectual. But what I am, I think, is a craftsman. I believe that education and teaching is a craft as much as an intellectual activity. And I love sharing my craft with other people. What you're going to hear from me this morning is probably highly prejudiced, a little bit outrageous, possibly a little bit naive. Most of what I've got to say to you comes from my very British experience of teaching and non-formal education. It's for you to decide whether what I say has any kind of resonance or synergy with your own experience that you encounter in your own countries with scouting. I'm not this morning going to make the case for non-formal education. I think we all believe in scouting and its power to transform young people's lives. But what I am going to do is to focus on what I believe children and young people need to learn to become successful adults. Whether that's taught in school, or whether it's in mainstream education, or is taught in extracurricular activities, maybe after school, or is learnt through clubs outside school, and indeed in scouting. What I think is very interesting is that there is a debate raging around the world at the moment about what young people should learn in order to be prepared for life. There is a pendulum, I think, that is swinging. There has been a concentration all over the world over the past few years on academic results. And of course they're important. And I'll return to that in a moment. But just academic results, I believe, are not enough. And I suspect that in this room, you would all agree with me. I'd better check that you're friendly. Do you agree with me? Well, that's lucky, because otherwise, this could be a really tough hour. On a Sunday afternoon, back in England, I often like to sit by a roaring log fire at this time of the year and read our Sunday newspapers. And just a few weeks ago, I read an article which really resonated with me. And I want to read just a little bit of it to you now. The headline, it's by a British journalist called Jenny Russell. And it was headlined, "Let's Put Character Above Exam Results." And this is what she wrote. Character is a word that has fallen out of favor in recent decades. Politicians rarely refer to it, perhaps because it implies value judgments about how people behave. Yet although we don't use the word, our public concern about character has never been greater. Employers complain that school leavers lack manners or motivation. Neighbours despair of aggression and antisocial behaviour. Hospitals, railway stations and council offices put up notices warning the public not to abuse their staff. This retreat from the question of how we socialise people is a disaster. For the past generation or so, British and American governments have assumed that the key to economic growth and social mobility lies in improving education and access to it. But for all the talk of driving up standards, the people who flourish at school and go on to good universities are still overwhelmingly middle class. Of course, that's a very British perspective. But I think she's right. There are a set of values and skills and behaviors and attitudes that young people need to be equipped for life that the classroom does not prepare them for. Do we have a role in scouting to do that? Oh boy, yes we do. So I want to concentrate today on what we can do to help young people be properly prepared for life. Properly prepared, ready, willing, and able. And whilst I think that exam results are important, there are a whole lot of other things that are equally important, if not more so. I talked about character, skills, behavior, attitudes. What I'm going to share with you today are what I would call some BGOs. Blinding glimpses of the obvious. But I hope that you'll find them useful, and I fear that they've been forgotten by too many policymakers in too many countries. Now, the debate on what children should learn through school and their experiences as children and young people has been raging for many, many years. Here's a picture taken in 1924 of a group of school children in the United Kingdom. I showed this to my nephew last week, and he asked me whether I was the one on the left. I now know I'm getting old. Here's something from the British Times Education Supplement of the 14th of June, 1924. The National Association of Head Teachers had opened their conference in Nottingham. If you haven't visited Nottingham, it's a very lovely place. So, there were about 200 delegates were present, and this is the report from the newspaper. Mr. A. Lord of Manchester, in those days people only had second names, Mr. A. Lord, was installed as president, and he delivered his presidential address. Mr. Lord reminded his audience that recently the conference of the National Chamber of Trade had expressed the opinion that the present system of elementary education was unsatisfactory for those entering industrial and commercial occupations. It was urged that businessmen ought to have some say regarding the education of the boys and girls who were to enter employment and in deciding what subjects would be useful to them in later life. It was suggested that there was too much idealism and too little practicality. 1924. Could have been written yesterday. And I was thinking about my own experience as a young person and the sort of way that I was prepared to enter adult life. It wasn't 1924. It was, in fact, 1982. I was a very attractive child. Do you know, talking to you lot is really hard work. That's my cat. And if you choose to follow me on Facebook, you can meet another cat at another time. What sort of adult life was I being prepared for? Well, I can't remember having very much preparation outside the classroom, specifically aimed at people saying to me, "Are you ready for life?" I had a careers teacher. His name was Mr. Wright. And he was wrong. Actually, he was quite close to the truth. He told me I should become either a social worker or a teacher. So, yeah, he was wrong, but there we are. I took a whole lot of tests. I was prepared, I suppose. But I remember that the most important preparation that I got, actually, now I look back at it, was through my scout troop and through the experience that I was given. And I want to return to that just a little later. Today's young people, though, are not the same as that. I'd just become a prefect that day. I was very proud. My mum was even prouder. But the young people today are not the same. Whether the young people are at the Doon School in India, or whether they're in one of our most prestigious establishments around the world, or whether they're in a comprehensive school in the middle of London, or wherever they might be, they're not the same as the young person that I was. I want to introduce you to somebody. This is Matt. You can just come back a bit. There you are. Can you just stand over there a bit? Just stand there, Matt. Turn around. Lovely. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is Matt, a video game software designer and world traveller. What sort of a world are he, his generation, and the generation we're currently educating going to inhabit? It's one where he's had to pick up the pieces left him by a generation, our generation, that has failed him. Where higher education has once again become something for the elite, as soaring university fees have made it inaccessible to most. It's one where more than 1.5 million people in my country are claiming unemployment benefits, where posts for trainee solicitors are down by 95%, where our biggest store has 250 people chasing each of its graduate jobs. Meet my friend Matt. He lives in a world where in India and China there are millions of young people entering the job market, where there are more gifted and talented students in those two countries than the total number of students in my country. It's a world where China will soon have the most English speakers in the world. It's a world where the idea of a job for life is one that's only read about on history websites. Matt expects to have between 10 and 14 jobs in his career. Meet my friend Matt. He doesn't know what jobs he's going to do in his life. He can't. Already the top 10 in-demand jobs in this year's graduate recruitment survey didn't exist 5 years ago. We're preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that have not been invented in order to solve problems we don't even know are problems yet. Matt and I live in a country that 100 years ago had the largest armed force in the world, was the centre of global business and finance, had the strongest education system on the planet, was the centre of innovation and invention, controlled a currency that was the world standard of value and had the highest standard of living. It isn't like that now. Matt's generation has always wanted to do well at school. 98% of British 12-year-olds say that they want to do well, but only just over a third of them actually look forward to going to school. Meet my friend Matt. He's got his own webpage, and he expects to do business from it, or something like it, for the rest of his life. He uses the internet in the way that we use books. His first port of call is Google, always. Meet my friend Matt. He doesn't expect to know everything. He expects to know where to find the answers to his questions, but not to need to remember the answer for longer than the moment that's important. He's just learned, and will soon forget, that 40 exabytes of unique new information will be generated worldwide this year. That's more than in the previous 5,000 years. He knows that we live in exponential times, that the amount of new technical information is doubling every 72 hours. Meet my new friend Matt, the new generation. He's just finished his degree, but for students starting a 3-year university degree, this means that half of what they learn in their first year of study may be outdated by the end of their course. Oh yeah, meet my new friend Matt, the new generation and the person we have to help find his way in the world. Meet my friend Matt. So if we're going to build character, what might that involve? Well, I'd suggest there are 3 E's that we need to think about. Enterprise, employability, and the empowerment of young people. And I'm going to deal with each of these in turn. Now, let me start with enterprise. And for a moment, I want you to imagine that you're 15 years old. For some of you, that's easier than others. But I want to tell you what I tell 15-year-olds every week when I speak to them around the world. I say to them that they need to have belief in themselves. This is something I think that young people often lack, and that Scouting can really provide for them. By giving young people activities in which they can really succeed, they can begin to believe in themselves. It's not very British to believe in yourself. It's quite American. The Americans are very good at believing in themselves. The British are less good. We spend our time saying, well, actually somebody else would be better at it than me. And so I spend quite a lot of my time saying to young people, get some belief in yourself. You can do anything. You can do anything. I then say to them, have some real belief in your ideas. Why? Well, because young people are full of the most amazing thoughts and ideas. And there are plenty of people who believe in themselves, but don't actually believe in the ideas that they have. I want you to listen to the words of this song that was written, I think, well over 50 years ago. It also happens to have some great dancing with it as well. But listen to the words.
Ho, ho, ho. Ha, ha, ha. He, you think the laugh's on me? They all laughed at Christopher Columbus when he said the world was round. They all laughed when Edison recorded sound. They all laughed at Wilbur and his brother when they said that man could fly. They told Marconi wireless was a phony. It's the same old cry. They laughed at me, wanting you. Said I was reaching for the moon, but all you came through. Now they'll have to change their tune. They all said we never could be happy. They laughed at us and how. But ho, 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 who's got the last laugh now?
1937. George and Ira Gershwin. They all laughed at Christopher Columbus when he said the world was round. They all laughed when Edison recorded sound. They all laughed at Wilbur and his brother when they said that man could fly. Who's got the last laugh now? And our young people have brilliant ideas on a daily basis. My 6-year-old nephew has 432 good ideas before breakfast and shares them all with me and his mother. We need to tell young people that they need to believe in themselves. We need to say that they need to believe in their ideas. But then they need to do something else as well. They need to believe in others. Because the power of the team is something very special. It's something that through the patrol system we've been developing for years. Young people learn through undertaking activity in scouting that yes, they can have a belief in themselves, yes, they can have a belief in their ideas, but better than anything else, if you've got a group of people working together, then 2 and 2 really can make 5. But there are too many young people, sadly, who do have a belief in themselves, who do understand the power of team, who do believe in their ideas, but never go very far. And that's because they don't have that spirit of enterprise. And so there is one final belief in your belief that I tell 15-year-olds about. And that one? Well, that one is about believing in action. Actually doing it. Getting off your backside and making it happen. And what I've found is that when young people do, and they're given the opportunity to do things for themselves, then the world can really change. And I'm sure you've found that experience through your scouting activity as well. And when I'm talking to a 15-year-old, I look at my most oldest and my most grey, and I remind them of what they're wearing on their feet. And they look down at their training shoes, and they say, oh yeah, Nike, just do it. And they get the message. Okay, so there then is the question of enterprise. But what about employability? What are the things that businesses are looking for in young people as they grow up and leave school? We did some research back in, I think it was 2011, and I asked 500 senior business leaders, admittedly all in the United Kingdom, what they wanted to see from young people coming out of school. And I want to show you the list now. Can you read that? Academic knowledge is, of course, important. They want young people to be able to come out of school being able to read and write and have good numeracy skills and have a good basic knowledge. But then if you look at all the other things here, it kind of links with what Chris was saying earlier. This is what business is looking for. Because business understands that filling young people with knowledge is not going to equip them for life. Look at those things: thinking skills, research skills, interpersonal skills, resilience, an inquisitive nature, practical intelligence, a set of values. Now that's what business people are telling us are important. And I don't have to make the point particularly strongly that if you look at what happens on a Thursday afternoon or a Thursday evening in scout huts all over the world, it's exactly those skills that we're developing. Exactly those skills. So then you finally come to the third of those E's. So you had enterprise, you had employability. Does anybody remember what the third one was? Empowerment. I tweeted this morning when Chris was speaking about Alex's comments. And some of you will have seen that on the screen. I don't believe that learning from adults is mutually exclusive from the empowerment of young people. And if I were to look at a set of values and skills and traits that we ought to be helping our young people to develop through scouting, I think this is a pretty good list. This was developed by David Hakala in 2008. And I think if I was looking for something that I wanted patrol leaders to bear in mind, or any young person going through scouting, I think that would be a pretty good list, don't you? And I think if you've got those, then you really can be an empowered young person. If you've got that vision, that feeling of what you want to do with your life, if you couple that with humility and openness and assertiveness and humor, then I think you're setting yourself up for a pretty successful adult life. So I share those with you, really, as I say, not as an academic, but because those are my touchstones when I'm trying to build character in young people. Now, I want to move on now to that issue of young people, because I am concerned that we imagine that the young people that we work with today are the same young people that we were several years ago. In my case, rather more than several years ago. And you may have seen some research that has gone on in recent years into the area of intergenerational sociology. And what I just thought I'd do is just remind us of a little bit of that this morning, so that we can focus trying to get those traits out of young people, recognizing that those young people are not the same as the young people that we were. If you haven't been introduced to generational sociology before, it's very simple. The suggestion is that what happens in the world and within society in the first few years of your life has an effect on the way in which your generation perceives the world. So my dad, who was born in the 1920s, spent most of his life under with the view that you ate everything on your plate, always. Why? Because actually when he was growing up, he grew up through the Second World War in the United Kingdom, and there was food rationing, and you didn't leave anything off your plate. He never, ever imagined that I would ever talk back to him, because he would have dared talk back to his dad. So I'm afraid that was a disappointment to him. He was somebody who never complained about anything. He just got on and dealt with it. I'm not like that. And how many of us in the room was born between the years of 1945 and 1965? Ah. Okay. Let's see whether this means anything to you for a moment. So I was born just at the end of that, in 1964. So I'm just at the end of the baby boomer period. I was born, although never experienced, the world of sex and drugs and rock and roll. Well, I've done the rock and roll. I'm going to show you just a little bit of a television commercial. And the television commercial was produced in South Africa. And it's meant to appeal to those of us who were born as baby boomers. Those of you who are not baby boomers, watch it closely, see what you think, and watch the reaction of the baby boomers in the room to the commercial. I'm going to have to stop this a moment. I'm sorry. Somebody's turned off my sound. Let's take it back. Do we have another go?
I remember the days of my life. I recall the faces, mostly yours. Magic moments, life was a mystery. There's no place on earth that we'd rather be. Moving up, going through some changes, storing up the memories. Then you gave me the light of my life. I always gave the best I could give. Passing on the memories.
Ah. Did the baby boomers all go, ah? Yeah, they did. Because baby boomers like the idea of passing on the memories. They like the idea that they're going to bring up a family that's going to love them forever, and everything's going to be gorgeous, and there are going to be fluffy lambs, and a beautiful blue sky, and everything's going to be okay. I'm not entirely sure that today's 17-year-old would really react in that way if given a beaten-up Volkswagen Beetle. But hey, it's television commercials. It's fine. All right. If you were born between 1965 and 1985, put your hand up. Ah. Okay. So you lot are known as Generation X. You're the gang who grew up really believing that what was important was to have a really great career, to make things happen for yourself and your family in that way, that going out and making money was seriously important. And the most important thing for Generation X is that everything happens now. Right now. Okay, going to show you another television commercial. This was banned in the United Kingdom, but I found it on the internet. This is what I think typifies Generation X. I apologize if you're hurt. So there's Generation X for you. Now, that group of people are pretty much the generation of our leaders who are now coming into positions of influence within our associations. And what do they look like? Well, they're not the same as me. That bit of individualism there is really important to them. The thrill seekers, the whiners, the people who are not terribly scared of failure. Now, I'd like to think that I was kind of being born in 1964, maybe I was just on the cusp of Generation X, so I have some of those traits. But I have to recognize that even working with leaders born after me, I have to think differently in terms of how I work with them in order to equip young people for life. It's no good imagining they're all going to think the same as me. And then I then discover why I really, really don't understand young people at all, and why Mr. Wright was wrong when he told me I should be a teacher, because I have no idea how to understand the next generation. So if you were born between 1985 and 2005, put up your hands. I hate you. So let's just explore them for a moment in a little more detail, because first of all, they deserve to suffer, and secondly, they're our young leaders. They're our young people. Now, I gave this presentation or something very similar to it a few weeks ago to a group of young leaders from all over the Islamic world. And I said to them, look, I'm British. This is a British perspective. If this aligns with your thoughts, that's great, but I'm guessing things might be very different. Be very interesting to get your views on this as a multinational audience. Their view was, no, John, we're exactly the same. But let's see. So, young people growing up today. First of all, as children, they've had a whole set of messages that previous generations didn't get. They were told from the moment they were born that they were special. Baby Gap was produced for them. The is it there? No. You know the little sign that goes that says "baby on board"? Yeah. As if you're on a car. Yeah. As if you're going to behave differently just because you know a baby is in. But anyway, those were produced for this generation. This gang are online 24/7 and permanently connected. They can do anything, and they can do it now. And they're expecting to achieve all the time. They're told that they can achieve. Nobody tells them in school that there are losers as well as winners. Everybody gets prizes. I'm not sure that's very healthy. But they do have a very strong ethic about serving the community. One actually that is much stronger than my own generation. So let's look at each of them in turn. Special, sheltered, confident, team-orientated, achievers, pressurized, and conventional. Why are they special? Well, because they've been sheltered. Many parents have bothered to take the time to be older and more financially stable before having kids. These are the most watched kids in generation. There are child restraints. There are home products. There are movie ratings. There is security in campus that I didn't have when I was at university. Thank goodness. And their parents are people like me, overprotective, wanting to pass on the key to the next generation, and desperately worried for their young people. They're confident. They've been told all their lives that self-esteem is really, really the most important thing. They're optimistic, but they're also practical. They're hopeful about the future, and they enjoy strong connections with their parents because their parents are taking the time to get to know them. They're much better at working in teams than the previous generations. Why? Because they've been doing so since playgroup. They've been living and working in groups. They have very tight peer bonds. They're very inclusive. they're not the individualists that Generation X was. They like setting goals, which is really good for scouting because we're really good at setting goals for them. This generation loves working for scout badges in a way that Generation X didn't particularly as much. They have the benefit of having some of the best educated parents in history. They themselves are the smartest ever, with a rising proficiency in maths and science and standardized tests. But they're also extraordinarily pressured. These are the young people and the children who have been driven from playdate to playdate. They're the young people for whom the term playdate was invented. When I was a little boy, we had a hill in my village. Grassy hill. It was called the Strawberry Banks. And my mum used to push me out the door, me and my brother, at 9 o'clock in the morning or earlier, and would expect us to come home when it got dark. And we would spend most of the day rolling down the hill and landing in the river at the bottom and discovering that if you didn't slow down, you hurt yourself. And we learnt how to fall out of trees. I went back to my village just a few weeks ago, and the brambles and the grass on the Strawberry Banks are this high because no children roll down that hill anymore because they're driven everywhere by their parents from activity to activity. This generation is pushed really hard, pushed to study hard, pushed to succeed, pushed to go on to university, pushed to choose careers that pay off. And my sense is there's going to be a reaction against that. It's going to come. Strangely, they identify with their parents' values. Whereas traditionally, teenagers have been the ones who have always pushed against everything, this gang are actually keener to conform. They tend to be rule followers if they're given rules that they understand. They accept authority. And their biggest way of showing any kind of dissent, at least in the United Kingdom, is if you say something to a teenager and they disagree with you, they'll go, whatever. And that's the limit of it. They're not the same as us. And, of course, they're permanently connected. This is the generation of young people who don't have to go to somebody else's house to be with them. This is the Facebook generation that will talk to each other online all the time. And as I mentioned in a group yesterday, I believe our responsibility is to help those young people to live a real life as well as a virtual one. The two don't have to be either or, but we need to help them have the real life that they deserve. This gang hate delay. They want everything right now. And just to give you a feel for how fast change has transformed our society, here's a little cartoon from the New York Post of just 3 weeks ago. These kids are never going to send a letter. They don't need to, because they can talk immediately. And I shudder to think what those of you who might be millennials in the room have already been posting on Twitter while I've been speaking. However, as they begin to mature, the rules of the world are also changing. In 1960, if you look at that, what that shows is kind of what it means to become an adult. You leave school, you leave home, you become financially independent, you marry, you have a kid. I'm not there yet, because I'm looking forward to the marrying bit and having a child, and I'm not entirely convinced about the financially independent. But in 1960, 77% of women and 65% of men had achieved all of those by the age of 30. 2010, 13% of women and 10% of men had done so. So we're looking at a generation that is completely different from the ones before. The roadmap's the same, but I guess millennials have a road trip mentality rather than a destination mentality. Now, where does Scouting sit then in supporting all of that? Well, I believe that what Scouting and non-formal education does is it fills in all those gaps that the classroom leaves out. We allow young people to understand risk because we get them to plan for themselves. We give them the roots that they need in order to have a set of values on which they can grow. I believe that young people need roots to grow and wings to fly, and we give them both. And non-formal education does that through the activities that we provide. We know what we want young people to learn, but we give them the freedom to be able to discover that within the game that we call Scouting. The question for me over the last 2 years or so has been, is that enough? And I'm standing not wearing my Scout scarf today because I'm standing with you as the Secretary General of the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award. And the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award, if you don't know it, is very simple. It's an achievement program, a bit like a set of Scout badges, but it's international. And the same program can be followed wherever you are in the world. Let me show you what I mean. I'd really like the sound on. Thank you. So what the Duke of Edinburgh's award is, the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award, is something very, very, very simple. Because I'm sure you recognize all of those as Scouting activities. The point of the award is to simply take those activities and recognize them with an international framework. And not just to do that through Scouting, but to do it through guiding to do it in prisons, to do it in schools, to do it in the air cadets, to do it anywhere where a young person might meet another young person. And the idea is to create a genuine currency around the world so that a young person can achieve their bronze or their silver or their gold award and can then tell an employer or a university that they've got it, and that can be communicated and everybody will understand. It's as simple as that. It's not a membership organization. Scouting and guiding use the award in a whole set of countries all over the world already. But I couldn't stand here today and not give you just a little advertisement for it. Why? Because of this generation. Because I believe it's really important with this connected generation that we begin to give them the opportunity to have that currency to go and do things for themselves and use their experiences in a way that will be recognized by employers and by universities in the future. So if you're interested in running the award in your association and you don't already, come and speak to me. Over the next 2 days, I can give you more information. We're already in more than 140 countries around the world. But I wanted really to begin to close by showing you just one piece of work that we've been recently doing, because I think it's something that Scouting is starting to do as well. And that's looking at the real impact that taking part in non-formal education has on young people. On the left-hand side there, you have what we see as being the impacts on society of good non-formal education. And that could just as easily be Scouting as anybody else. We have 9 impact areas that we're now doing research on to be able to show how non-formal education makes a difference. And on the right-hand side are the personal outcomes that we believe that young people have that equip them for life. Again, if you'd like some more information about that, then please let me know. I believe that non-formal education is essential to young people's lives. I believe it is more essential now than ever before, and I think I've explained why. I wanted to finish this morning by just reading you something which gets me up in the morning. It was written a long time ago by a guy called Pablo Casals. Does anybody know him? He was a cellist, yeah? Yeah, an amazing cellist. But he was also an extraordinary writer. And this is what he wrote. And if I'm going to leave you with any thoughts today, this would be what it would be. Each second we live is a new and unique moment of the universe. A moment that never was before and never will be again. And what do we teach our children in school? We teach them that 2 and 2 make 4, and that Paris is the capital of France. When will we also teach them what they are? We should say to each of them, do you know what you are? You are a marvel. You are unique. In all of the world, there is no other child exactly like you. In the millions of years that have passed, there has never been a child like you. And look at your body. What a wonder it is. Your legs, your arms, your cunning fingers, the way you move. You may become a Shakespeare, a Michelangelo, a Beethoven. You have the capacity for anything. Yes, you are a marvel. And when you grow up, can you then harm another who is, like you, a marvel? You must cherish one another. We must all work to make this world worthy of its children. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brother and sister Scouts, is what I think we try to do every week. Thank you. And thank you. We we haven't left a lot of time for questions, but I'd be very happy to take any, not just questions, but reflections from people in the audience now. There is a square here that you have to stand on to make yourself famous throughout the internet. So if anybody has anything they'd like to share, let's do so now. Yeah. And please introduce yourself as well.
My name is Ahmed Isaka from Ghana. My question, or is there a contribution, has to do with the presentation that you just delivered. Throughout the session, I've been listening, and I'm trying to compare what you just delivered and what we as leaders or role models for our young ones deliver, or what Scouting is delivering to the young ones. It looks as if what you delivered and what we have as Scouts, if you look at them, there is no much difference in between them. And therefore, I believe if Scouting per se can come together with other NGOs, I think it will go a long way to give us a way of modeling the children the better way than we seeing the children moving from one organization to other. In the sense that we can all say that Scouting does not operate in isolation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other views? Yep.
So my name is Martin, the president of the Guides and Scouts in Sweden. So John, with this, that we have different generations within Scouting, baby boomers, Xers and millennials, how do we create an environment in the world organization that enables the millennials to be as free and take their views in how Scouting should be delivered, at the same time as baby boomers are given an area where they can pass the organization on in a way that they recognize it?
I think I should put my purple scarf around my neck. That's an exceptional question. And of course, we've been struggling to answer that question for nearly 15 years now in terms of the engagement of young people in the decision-making processes of WSEC. I think I would have 3 responses for you. There have to be 3 because Karina Olbach is in the room and she was trained by McKinsey and she's told me how to behave. So there have to be 3 answers to every question. I think that the first thing is to recognize that different skills and experience are relevant at different places within an organization. And we should not assume that everybody wants to be sitting on the World Scout Committee or sitting in the committee structures and decision-making structures of our individual National Scout organizations. Actually, quite a lot of people just want to make things happen at grassroots level with young people. And we should not imagine that by creating decision-making processes within our own organizations, we are naturally solving the problem. Because actually, the problem is even greater at group level, where young people's views are often not heard. So I think there's a space there for recognizing that there are different mechanisms. The second thing I would say is that if we are going to create decision-making processes for young people to be engaged properly through our world organization, then they have to be real and not pretend. This should not be a sandbox for people to play with. The work that has been done in terms of developing the World Scout Youth Forum, and this is a personal view, not that of the committee, of course, I think the work has been excellent. But it is a parallel decision-making space. And my vision would be to see the World Scout Conference and the World Scout Youth Forum come together so that there wasn't a separate parallel decision-making process, but actually we were making decisions, all of us, in the same room and recognizing each other's particular skills and abilities, including the baby boomers, who actually do have something still to offer, even me. And then the third thing I can't think of. So I'll leave it at 2. Okay. Yep.
John, congratulations on a fantastic presentation. One thing which I'd like to explore is we live in a world of rules and regulations, mostly to protect young people. I don't dispute the importance of that. But in a world of rules and regulations, there are many fewer opportunities for young people to have, to have experiences that are arguably important for the growth and development of those people. In Australia, where I come from, we refer to it as the cotton wooling of our young people. Your thoughts, what can we do as a youth development organisation to persuade governments, to persuade the broader community of the value of things like the Scout program to help those young people learn by doing?
Thank you. My reaction to that is that we have to learn the difference between trying to get rid of risk, which is what I think cotton wooling is about, and managing risk. And what we do really effectively particularly with hikes and with adventurous activity, is we help young people to learn how to take risks within a controlled environment. What we have to do is make sure that that environment that we set up has enough space for young people to make mistakes without hurting themselves too badly. And I say too badly because I worry about us cotton-wooling kids too much. I was a district commissioner at home just a few years ago, and I went on my district camp, and I found this distraught beaver scout. Beavers are aged between 6 and 8 years old. Little girl, absolutely in floods of tears. She was on her own, first of all. There was no adult around her, which immediately made me worry, because, of course, they should always be supervised and so on and so forth. And I said to her, "What's wrong?" And she went, and eventually she said, "I fell out of that." And she was pointing at a tree. So not only had she been on her own, but she'd also managed to climb a tree on her own and fall out of the tree on her own. Now, you might say, well, that's absolutely appalling. The leaders had failed to look after her. Everything was dreadful. Actually, the truth of the matter is we were in a very safe environment. She'd wandered off on her own. People knew where she was. Everything was fine. She'd chosen to climb a little bit up a tree. She'd fallen out. She hadn't broken anything. And when I said to her, "Is everything all right?" She said, "Yes, can I go up again?" So my feeling is we have to create the opportunities, and then we have to explain what we're doing to others. And I think if we explain to parents the way in which that we're creating these opportunities, and we will keep their children safe, but we want them to make mistakes and learn from them, then we will actually create a better society going forward. We are over time. I'll take 2 more, and then I think we must finish.
I want to say thank you for this session. I'm called Okelo. Richard, I said Okelo so that you learn a new name. I work at Uganda and in the Scouts office. I'm in the middle age generation X. I interact with the upper group and then the lower group. So I am torn in between 2 parts. And each of those challenges, I find them, but our core business to me are the younger generation as the Scouts. Therefore, it means much of our energy and time we need to spend on them so that we can make them better. I just want to say what we benefited from the award system he presented last. We took it as an additional activities for our young people, and we presented it to them. what has turned out to me is that it has helped us to grow the number of our scouts. They had a little more additional activities which was on the plate for them to choose from. And in the process, because of being part of the award, we have even other people who were not scouts who ended up picking a lot more things which are in scouting, and they ended up becoming members for Uganda Scout Association. So using the award system for us helped us even to enrich our program. Not only the scouting, there was also another set of activities the young people would participate in. And in the process, our number, for me, has really grown. And a number of our scout leaders have also benefited from the award training. They can be able to deliver it even as they are doing scouting. So we find that the two programs actually complement. And actually scouting benefits more because the number grows, then the activities for young people becomes many. So they have a lot more to choose from and what to do. And the award is more challenging, especially as they get to older age, which is a challenge in scouting activities for our rover scouts. It's a bit of a challenge for our NSO in particular. So the award is bridging that gap for us. I want to just say thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for that ringing endorsement, because yeah, I'm absolutely delighted that the award is working so closely with the Scouts in Uganda. In fact, you're one of our fastest growing countries. One last point then, which I think was coming from there. Yep.
Thanks, John, for your good presentation. I'm really convinced that youth empowerment is really important. Yesterday we spoke about it a long time. For me, for today, my question will be, all right, let's empower the youth, but how the adults will accept this youth empowerment? Because as you show that adults live in certain the respect, for example, the religion, they are a little bit closed, something like that. Don't you think we need to train as well or to prepare as well the adult to accept the youth to take certain responsibilities to I don't know if you get the point what I want to say. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I do. I mean, I think that you can't simply allow things just to develop organically. If you want change to happen, you have to plan for it. And that means providing effective training and support for everybody involved in order that they best understand how to relate to each other. So not only have you got to train young people, if you're going to empower them with the skills and behaviors that they need to be able to take a constructive role, but you also have to train the elders to understand how to give up and how to let go and allow them that opportunity to do so with dignity and to be recognized for what they've done. And sometimes what we do is we try to have revolution in an organization whose culture is not one of revolution, it's one of evolution. So the more we can do to train and support each other, but still drive forward progress, then I think the happier we'll be. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. And I think lunch is now being served, and if I remember rightly, it isn't right downstairs. I think lunch today is somewhere else. But I don't know where, and you'll have to find it. Thank you very much.